I'm running this off YouTube and off Facebook today. So hello to everyone on YouTube, which I think has already started, but give me a couple of minutes to sort myself out. I'm trying to, Noah, you sit up here. I'm trying to get Noah's hands off the table. Okay, guys, welcome back to my live daily broadcast. This is Jackie M. For those of you who don't know me, this is one of my live daily broadcasts. I run them all over the place on Google Plus or YouTube now, YouTube Live, on Facebook, via BeLive, and all sorts of platforms really. But just give me a couple of seconds while I share this across some of my other social media profiles. So if you're joining me for the first time, like I said, my name is Jackie M, and I am a Malaysian street food specialist, and I'm a former Malaysian restaurateur based here in Sydney, Australia. Noah's not happy about sitting on the chair. And former Malaysian restaurateur. Now I do a lot of these live events and cooking demonstrations and all that sort of stuff. Okay, yeah, give me 2 seconds while I share this across. And Cyan, if you're watching this, Cyan is my assistant. Yeah, if you can just make sure this is shared across. 2 seconds. Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So my website, before just so we can get all the housekeeping out of the way, is jackiem.com.au, JACKIEM.com.au. And before I get started on all this, I just want to give a quick shout out to Lenovo Australia for providing me with the laptops I use for my live broadcast. I'm using a Lenovo Y700 gaming laptop, and also I'm running this concurrently on YouTube on my Lenovo X1 Yoga laptop as well. And today I'm going to be using my Optimum Thermocook, which is similar, very similar to a Thermomix. This is what it looks like. And of course, you can replicate this recipe across your, I just realized I need to plug this in, you know, other kitchen machines, or even just your food processor or blender. Okay, give me a minute. Sorry, guys. Okay. Here we go. Now, like I said, I'm using an Optimum Thermocook, and for those of you not familiar with these kitchen machines, which was my case just over a year ago, I had no idea how these work. These basically are multi-function kitchen machines. They can blend, they can puree, they can process, they can also cook. The way they cook is that they basically heat up the food while they stir it for you, okay? So I'm basically taking advantage of the different functions in this Thermocook for me to make my own. Noah. Noah is my Down syndrome toddler, so you will see him in my live broadcast now and then. And if you've got any questions, guys, especially if you're watching this from Facebook, hit me up with the questions, and they should filter into my screen here, so I'll try and keep an eye out for them, right? Yeah, so I'm using this, but of course, if you don't have one of these, you can use a blender plus a saucepan, right? And you just need a strainer and all that. Now, what you need primarily, found a new toy. What you need primarily is soybeans. This is what they look like after they've been soaked overnight, right? Just let me bring this up close to the camera. Here you go, right? Soybeans. I think most people in the US certainly would be familiar with soybeans. And there's about 120 grams of soybeans here that have been sitting in this tub of water. And I'm just gonna strain this out now. I should have brought something with me. Okay, I'm just gonna strain out the water. And what I want to do is first blend it, right, with some water. I'm only making about 1 liter of soy. What we call soy milk in Southeast Asia is what you guys know as well, what they know nowadays as soy drink, okay? So I'll just explain the difference. Sorry, just give me a second. No, we come. Here you go. Here we go. Good boy. You sit here and watch. Okay, you watch. Look, Navi, you're on camera. Look. Okay, he's in the spinning mood. He wants to grab round things and spin them on the floor. Okay, so we call them soy milk back in the day, but then we came to Australia and we found that Westerners started to take a liking to using basically dairy-free replacement for milk. So they make their own version of soy milk, which is unsweetened, right? So if you were buying soy milk from Aldi, which is where this came from, this would be unsweetened and it will be stronger flavored because it will be more, I guess, you know, it will be less diluted than soy drink, right? So a soy drink you can buy at Asian grocery stores, and that's what I'm actually replicating today. I've got the soybeans in here, right? And I'm going to, thank you, Samantha. So I'm going to first add some water. I've got about 1 liter of water in here. And all I'm doing, I'm just going to add about half of it in here. And I'm going to use basically the blender function on this and just blend it, right, for about a minute. So it's going to be a little bit loud, bear with me. That's 30 seconds, right? Because I'm abbreviating this for you. But to 120 grams of soybeans, like I said, I'm making about 1 liter of soy drink, right? If you wanted to make soy milk the way you would be familiar with, you know, in the Western diet context, right? You would want to use less water, okay? So you would want to use maybe about 700 mils of water or something like that. Just play around with it. It's not a fixed science as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so what I want to do is just strain out some of the water first, okay? So I've got this basket here that just helps me get some of the water out. Now, if you've ever been to Asia, right, just in the last, I guess, 20 years or so, maybe even longer, what started appearing in the marketplace is kind of your own soy drink making machine, right, which does all this for you. But if you've got a thermo cook or a thermo mix, you can do the same thing just using this, and then you can do other things with it as well. So I'm just adding the rest of the water in here and then blending this again, right? Okay, now if your audio is working, right, I want to forget about this because I've just had a long break. I want to give a shout out to Rode Australia as well for the microphones I use in my live broadcasts. Okay, so again, that was only 30 seconds and I'm just going to strain it into here. Okay, so I've got about 1 liter of soy milk. Now you need to cook this, okay? So I'm just gonna strain the rest of this out. Now we're going to have to go and strain all this out again properly at the end, right? But essentially what we've got is just a, you know, the liquid here, and the leftover soybeans, we're going to throw it out, right? And I know you can probably do other things with it. I'm not going to bother. And by the way as well, if you want to make your own tofu, you can use this too, right? And I'll talk about this a little bit later on. So just let me get out the puree here. So here you go. Like I said, I'm just going to throw it out. They're so cheap anyway. I'm just going to give this a quick rinse in the kitchen. I'll be back. Okay, so this has been washed out, and now what I want to do is just put the extract back in here, and then I'm gonna cook it, okay? So let's set this. I want to put some sugar in it because I'm making soy drink. Like I said, the Asians like our soy milk or soy drink a little bit sweet. Right, there's about 4 tablespoons of sugar in here, and I'm going to add some ginger as well, right? So that goes in, and I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to cook this for about, okay, I want to set this at about 90 degrees. Now, you got to remember with soy milk, it froths up and it can kind of like, you know, spill over if you're boiling it in a saucepan. So if you're doing this in a saucepan, make sure that you I'm going to turn the speed to 0 and the time. Okay, so this is going to cook for about 10 minutes or so. Right, now the point of difference between a thermo cook and a thermo mix is that a thermo cook, you can actually set it to boil without the blade spinning, which is what I've done over here. If you were using a thermo mix, right, the blade has to spin for it to actually operate, otherwise it won't heat up, okay? So in that case, if you were using a Thermomix, set it to a speed of 1, or you can do a reverse blade, because that's one function that the Thermomix can do, which a Thermocook can't, which is to spin it in reverse. And what that effectively does is that it uses the, it spins it with the dull side of the blade hitting your contents, right? And the reason why this is, I guess, is necessary in this case is because I've thrown in a couple of slices of ginger in here. If you're not using ginger, then it's not a worry. I just don't want my ginger kind of like all, you know, pureed into that sort of thing. So for the thermocook, I'm just throwing it in, and then with the sugar, with the mixture, and I'm just heating it up to 90 degrees and cooking it for about 10 minutes or so. And then after that, we're going to have to strain it out again, right? Now, I mentioned, like I said, if you were making a soy milk, as in like a milk replacement, you want to use less water in here. So like I said, use about 700 ml, see how you go. Add more water, less water, whatever works for you. And don't put sugar in, obviously. And of course, with the Chinese, usually if you want to be a little bit more, I guess, sophisticated with this recipe, instead of just using pure white sugar, you can use what we call rock sugar in Chinese, right? So you go to your local Asian grocery store, look for rock sugar, and then use that. And that just has a slightly different nuance to it, but otherwise white sugar is fine, 4 tablespoons of it. Soybeans you can buy, I don't know whether you can buy them at Western supermarkets, but I usually buy them at Asian grocery stores. Just ask the store owner where they keep their soybeans. You can buy them in 1 kilo bags. I forget how much they cost now, they're not much, right? And like I said, I've only used like just over 100 grams of it, so that will last you a long time. So it's a very, very cost-effective way and a very easy way making your own soy milk or soy drink at home, right? Making tofu. Now, there's a particular ingredient you can buy from Asian grocery stores, right? If you were making your own tofu, it's kind of like a white powder, and they sell them in little sachets, and you got to just ask the guys, say that you're, shush, ask the guy, for the, the coagulant for making tofu, and he'll dig it out for you, right? And for what it's worth, if you're based in Sydney, I do my shopping at this grocery called Tan Hong Long over in Homebush West. Over in Flemington. If you get off the train at Flemington in Sydney, it's just one of those grocery stores at the end of the arcade over there, and they're pretty helpful. They're pretty well stocked with all kinds of ingredients. So ask for that powder, but I don't like to use that powder because it's a little bit of a black art to me, because it's more for professional tofu makers in my mind anyway. I'm not entirely comfortable doing that. But I was told once by one of the girls at that grocery store, because they didn't have that powder available. She used to work in a Chinese restaurant, and she says that what they use for making tofu, and we're talking about silken tofu here, right? We're talking about the soft white tofu that we Asians like, not the hard tofu that Westerners are more familiar with, right? That's a different ball game altogether. But if you were making the soft, silky tofu, you just add eggs, right? You want a cold soy milk, right? Like this, and then you add eggs. And I tried it the other day. I forget how much now. I'll put down the recipe, right? I steamed it in this steamer, my Sunbeam steamer over here. And it is very, very powerful, and it's steamed I think it got too hot too quickly, so the tofu tasted really, really nice, but it was, I guess, a little bit bubbly in its appearance. It wasn't smooth, but the flavor was great. So you can make your own tofu by cracking quite a fair bit of eggs, and she says they use eggs in restaurants if they're being extravagant, right? But they usually don't use eggs because eggs are just so expensive in comparison to using that special powder coagulant thing, right? So yeah, to make your own tofu, use some cold soy milk, add some eggs, beat it up, add a tablespoon of tapioca flour or corn flour into it, beat it up, right? Pour it into a tray and steam it. The recipe I followed said to steam it for 15 minutes, but because I was using this and steaming it for actually only 10 minutes, it was already too hot too quickly, so it was a little bit more solid than I would have liked. So I'm going to experiment with it a little bit more, but I'll post the recipe once I've refined it so that you can have a go at making a soft silken tofu at home as well. So, this recipe for making your own soy milk, soy drink, it's very useful in that regard as well. Next time you go shopping, look for soybeans. You just got to remember to soak it overnight. So if you actually, if you're busy, come home from work or whatever, throw some in a glass, in a jar like this, and just soak it. It only went up to about here. Soak it overnight. Next day, throw it into one of these, and away you go. So it's so easy, right? Now, I mentioned those machines, soy milk maker machines. I actually used to own one. This is years before the Thermomix and Thermocook actually appeared on the market. I used to own one. And what it does is that it contains a kind of like a basket, right, that the soybeans go into, and you puree it, and then it cooks it sort of thing, and then it flavors the soup outside the soup, the water outside in the jug, but outside the basket sort of thing. And it, the one thing about soy milk is that you want to be able to strain it with really, really fine cloth, right? Otherwise, it still will taste gritty. And that's my problem with using that particular soy milk maker as well, sort of thing. And apart from the fact that it just didn't seem, because it's got all these preset settings, right? It just seemed as though the preset settings didn't cook it for long enough for it to remove that raw taste in it. And you know what I mean, if you make your own soy milk or tofu and that sort of stuff, soy milk in particular. So you just got to play around a little bit. My parents used to make their own soy milk, and they would have like these really big tall pots, right? And they'll spend, it's kind of like an all-day affair. So they'll be like, you know, blending in the blender and then straining and then tipping and all that sort of stuff. And they'll end up with like a ton load of soy milk. And then because we come from a big family and extended family sort of thing, all the relatives will be asked to drop by at my parents' place when they'll be home from work that night to pick up a few jugs of soy milk for their own personal consumption. So that's how we used to do it. As far as the ingredients that I put into this, right, like I said, I use sugar. Noah, please. Come over here, baby. I use sugar and I use ginger. You can use pandan leaves if you want, if you've got pandan leaves, right? Pandan, for those who don't know, is kind of like what I like to describe as Asian vanilla. No, wait, stop. Malini, tofu fa, that's a good question. Tofu fa uses gypsum, actually. You can actually, the easiest way to make tofu fa is you can actually buy these Japanese packs of like tofu, right? Basically, again, it's the same kind of deal, but it comes with that packet, that sachet of it's not, I don't think it's actually gypsum, it's something else. The Japanese use something else similar to gypsum. But yeah, thanks for reminding me, Malini, that the name of the powder is actually gypsum in English. But I don't know if I've got some lying around, but if you go to your Asian grocery store or Japanese grocery store, you find these packets that show you how to, that basically contain all the ingredients to make your own Japanese tofu. And what we used to do was that whatever the amount of water it's set to put in, I think like 700 ml, we would double it, right? And tofu fa, for those who don't know, is like a tofu dessert, right? Which is like a, if you think of tofu, you get the hard tofu, you get the soft tofu, you get the silken tofu, and if you have it even softer, you get a really kind of like just melt in your mouth, really nice, like even softer than jelly tofu, which we serve with a sugar syrup, and we call it tofu fa, right? And that's what I used to make with that as well. But I've tried to make my own using gypsum with tofu fa, and it's very like I say, it's a bit of a black art. You have to kind of like, you have to stir it one particular direction, get a really deep pot, have the gypsum or whatever it is at the bottom of the gypsum, right? And you pour it in and you stir in one direction and then you don't touch it and then you cover it and you let it settle. And then it basically turns into this, you know, it coagulates. So it was a little bit involved in that regard. Noe, please come over here. Come to Mama. Good boy. Good boy. Come over here. Come, sweetie. Over here. Come. Good boy. Here we go. Yeah, so tofu fa, like I said, the best success I've had with tofu fa is actually buying those Japanese packets and doing it that way, right? Which basically involves, again, pouring the soybean powder in a saucepan, adding water. I double the amount of water that it says, you know, for making tofu, stirring it till it comes to a boil, and then quickly adding this sachet of, the Japanese, like I say, they use something else to gypsum. I don't know what it is, but I don't read Japanese, unfortunately, not very well anyway. So you pour it, and then you stir it quickly in one direction, stop, cover it, leave it alone, don't touch it for like 20-30 minutes, and then that will give you a tofu fa. So that's the best explanation I've got for you at the moment, Malini. But I'll keep experimenting. Like I said, I've tried to make it from scratch doing this and then using gypsum, but it just seemed like it didn't turn out because you have to pour the liquid from a very high, you know, from very high up straight into a very deep pot. Otherwise, you just splatter. It just seemed like a little bit of a messy endeavor and not an exact science, so that it didn't turn out as nice as I would have liked it, right? how's this going? Okay, so this is boiling. Just give me a second. Here we go, baby. Now, what I want to do is strain it out. And like I said, you want a really fine mesh to be out. So just your typical kitchen strainer isn't going to cut it, unfortunately, when you're straining out your soy milk, right? So I've got this here. Just let me stop this for a sec. It's still actually, to be fair, to be honest, it still smells a little bit raw to me. Okay, so I'm just going to taste test this. Let me get a spoon. Kitchen. It tastes just a touch raw to me, so I'm just going to cook it for another minute or so. And I might just up the temperature a little bit to 95 degrees, right? 94 degrees. See how we go. Okay, now, like I said, I'm using a thermocook. You can do this in a Thermomix, or you can just do this. You can process the soybeans in a blender. Okay, so it's ended now. You can, and then pour them into a saucepan and then just cook them up that way. So that does the same thing. So this is what it looks like, right? And you want to strain this. Just let me get a deeper bowl, okay? And what I'm going to do is actually do a double layer of this strainer cloth. And some people have asked me where you buy these from. These ones that I buy this size, again, at Asian grocery stores. Keep an eye out for them. Usually they hang up on the board, like on a cardboard board, right? Just in the aisles anywhere. And they're usually used for actually for Chinese herbs. You know, if you're making a Chinese herbal soup or something like that, you might put the herbs in there and then throw this bag into your soup, right? And you're going to find even after straining this, okay? So you can see there's a little bit of a residual stuff in there. And this is what I've got now here. Just a beautifully smooth. I'm not going to try and wander up close because it's quite hot. But you're going to find if you let this settle, you're still going to get a little bit of residue at the bottom. Okay, so when you tip it out, it's just unavoidable. You know, unless you want to keep straining it till it's completely like residue free. Generally, you will find that, you know, when you get to the bottom of your supply of soy milk, that there's going to be a little bit of a residue at the bottom. No one, stop. Okay, so I hope this is easy enough for you to follow. I'm going to post the recipe on my website, jackiem.com.au. Those of you who are interested in a Thermomix, you have to actually visit their website. They'll call out a consultant to talk to you. If you're interested in a thermocook, you can actually buy it through online, and it gets delivered online. And if you want to support what I do, you can buy it through my affiliate link, which is just jackiem.com.au/Fruity, F for Freddy, ROOTHIE. Fruity is the company that distributes the thermocook, and for everyone that sold through that link, I get a small commission out of it, and that will just help me to be able to bring you more recipes. Okay, guys. Thanks again for joining me, and we've got some good ideas for our broadcast in this coming year. So keep an eye out for these. I may not be running them concurrently on Facebook and YouTube for much longer. What I might do is have different series for each of my platforms, okay? Because it seems a bit redundant to be sharing the same video, you know, from YouTube and Facebook. I might do a particular series for YouTube, a series for Facebook, and I've got a new platform that I'm checking out. It's called Twitch, TWITCH, twitch.tv/Jackie, and food is my profile there. And I'm checking that out, and I will probably use that platform for longer form broadcasts that show you from step by step for some of the recipes that might take an hour to do, right? It's just not that feasible. I think people just don't have the attention span on certain platforms like YouTube to watch me for an hour. Okay, anyway, thank you guys for your continued support. I will see you tomorrow with another broadcast. If you've got any questions, don't forget to post it here. Any more questions? Okay. Malini was trying to get gypsum. I think I've got some lying around here somewhere. Next time I see you, I'll try and remember to bring it with me. Anyway, yeah, thank you guys. If you've got any questions, don't forget to post it in your comments, and I'll answer them in my next broadcast, or within Facebook or whatever itself. Okay, thanks. I'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.